Well, thank you, Isabelle, for the very kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. C'est un grand plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui à Montréal. Malheureusement, je ne parle pas français. Mais c'est très important d'être ici avec vous, la communauté des affaires de Montréal et du Québec, pour discuter les liens entre nos provinces et pour grandir nos économies. Let me say it again in English. It is very important for me to be here with you, the business community of Montreal and Quebec, to discuss the ties between our provinces and to grow our economies. When I saw how big the room was, I said, did they know it was the Premier of Alberta that was coming here? I am very pleased to see some of my old friends. Jean Charest, who I reminded him I was a Charest delegate back in 1992 when I was president of the Campus Conservative Club at the University of Calgary. Didn't work out for you that first time, but I am glad to see that you've had so many other opportunities. Also, Eric Duhem, who spent many times with me discussing politics at the Fraser Institute years ago. Nice to see you, my friend. I know that Monsieur Plamondon is here as well, and he recently spent some time in our province. Nice to see you, as well Madame Daranceau as well. Very nice to see you as well. And Laurent, thank you so much for hosting such a wonderful, robust conversation this morning. We have so many things that we have in common, and I'm looking forward to building on that. Montreal, of course, is just such a lovely city, and it is especially breathtaking at this time of year. I think we're at -3 in Calgary, so it's very nice to enjoy a real autumn in another part of our country. It's also beautiful in the spring, which is something that I was fortunate to enjoy when I was here last April. I met many of you then as well. During that visit, I did meet with many members of Montreal's investment and business community, as well as leaders in many industries, including energy, manufacturing, aviation, and transportation. We had very many interesting and promising conversations. And if you'll pardon the spring metaphor, I think many seeds were planted on that trip, and I left the city with optimism about the opportunities those seeds might bring. My spring trip to Montreal came at a pivotal time for our country. We were in the middle of a federal election, and while we had a new prime minister, our provinces were still struggling with the same old problems with Ottawa, in some cases, new and worse ones. And this was all while we were facing serious issues from the new U.S. administration. What I took away from my last visit here was that there's a mutual and growing desire to work together. There's a real will for Alberta and Quebec to collaborate as partners to achieve goals that benefit our provinces individually and that enable us to stand united to unleash the full potential of our national economy. I'm here now to build on those discussions from a few months ago and to continue to grow the partnership between Alberta and Quebec, west to east, and advance our collective pursuit for prosperity nationwide. I also joke with Laurent because our first conversation was when he told me that they were taking over a Canadian Western Bank, and I said, well, why don't you just move your headquarters to Edmonton instead? Yeah, he said I wouldn't get a very good laugh on that joke, but I'm still going to keep on trying. But I know that a stronger Canada is a vision that we all share. I had the pleasure of speaking with Monsieur Charest just a couple of weeks ago at a global investment forum in our province, and I was heartened by our conversation about Quebec and Alberta and Canada. I was also encouraged this morning, after joining many of you for a business roundtable. It is clear that Alberta and Quebec have many opportunities and many reasons to work together. Of course, we both want to see our provincial economies succeed, and that means creating environments that support the success of our industries and our businesses. We also share similarities in our economies, and by that I mean Alberta and Quebec each have strong and diverse economies that include large manufacturing and agriculture sectors, as well as natural synergies in areas such as transportation and logistics, technology and innovation, mining and agri-food. And most recently, we marked a milestone in our shared interest in aerospace. Earlier this month, Alberta announced its new Alberta Training Centre of Excellence for Aerospace and Aviation at the Calgary International Airport. This 126,000 square foot facility represents a substantial shared investment between Alberta and CAE, based here in Montreal. This is CAE's first dedicated training centre in our province. And once complete, it will have the ability to train more than 6,000 industry professionals annually, including pilots and crew members. And that's just one example of the heights that we can reach, quite literally, through east-west collaborations. As economic partners, we can capitalize on investment opportunities here on land, across the country, as well as outside of it. In Alberta, we offer investors from within Canada and around the world the opportunity to enjoy what we call the Alberta Advantage. These advantages include our competitive tax regime. Not to rub it in too much, but we do have the lowest corporate tax rate in Canada by about 30%. Alberta also has some of the most business-friendly policies in the country. We've made a real commitment to cut red tape. I used to work at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. They've given us an A when it comes to red tape reduction. And we want industry to be free to focus on what is important, which is growing businesses to meet increasing demand here and around the world and creating jobs and opportunities for Albertans and partner jurisdictions such as Quebec. Since 2019, Alberta has already cut red tape by more than 33%, saving, we estimate, about $3 billion for Alberta and Alberta businesses. Our government also supports companies in advancing their work in traditional and emerging industries. And that includes incentives in the petrochemical and agro-processing industries, the film and television industry, and carbon capture utilization and storage infrastructure. I met with Deep Sky as well, another Quebec-based company that is pioneering direct air capture. We're very excited about that. We also have a highly educated workforce, and our workers have the skills that employers are working for. Of course, we're home to an abundance of natural resources, and we continue to champion free trade, free markets, and free enterprise. Alberta is a strong proponent of removing internal trade barriers in Canada because we know open trade equals stronger business. We removed 75% of Alberta's exceptions under the Canada Free Trade Agreement, and we continue to push for greater labour mobility, fewer regulatory barriers, and increased investment opportunities. Our government is dedicated to creating jobs for Albertans, Quebecers, and Canadians, and growing our province's economy within a united Canada. And the key word here is united. We need to forge strategic partnerships between all provinces to reduce trade barriers within Canada, to increase labour mobility across provinces, and to fast track and break ground on nation-building infrastructure and resource projects across energy, critical minerals, and more. When global investors look at opportunities in Canada, we want them to see the incredible potential here. And we want them to respond to what they see with a resounding yes. But that can only happen if they have confidence in our country. Alberta and Quebec frequently lament Ottawa's failure to respect provincial jurisdiction. Both continually strive to protect provincial jurisdiction. And this is why Alberta is urgently calling for a repeal or substantial amendment of various federal laws and regulations. To that end, I've developed a list of what I call the 9 bad laws. The list includes laws and policies that only serve to hinder energy production in Alberta and, by extension, hindering our ability to achieve full prosperity and our potential in Canada. I'll be happy to speak about that list in more detail during my fireside chat with Isabelle. I have had great conversations with the Prime Minister about repealing these laws. In fact, I do have to make an exit at 1 o'clock today so I can meet him in Ottawa before he heads off to Washington. And I am encouraged to see that we will see a progress on these laws, and that we will have an agreement that will benefit both Canadians and Albertans. I've been calling it the grand bargain. By removing the 9 bad laws, that will be central if we're going to actually be a nation that functions. We need to be able to attract private investment capital to some of these big projects. We also need another bitumen pipeline to the Northwest Coast, one that will bring 1 million additional barrels to markets in Asia and beyond. And the final piece of the bargain is the Pathways to Net Zero project. It's a major multi-billion-dollar project that will utilize carbon capture utilization and storage to remove the carbon dioxide from our industrial oil sands operations and store it underground, ensuring that Alberta's energy is the lowest emitting energy in the world. And we want to restore investor confidence to get the economy rolling again. Ottawa must have, it absolutely has to repeal or dramatically revise these reckless and harmful laws in order to do it. And I will say that recently I have had some hope that we are seeing a change in direction. Since Mark Carney became Prime Minister, he eliminated the consumer carbon tax. He suspended, for now, the net zero vehicles mandate. And he created the major projects pathway, incidentally, centered out of Calgary with Don Farrell, who's a very prominent Calgary business figure at the helm of it, so that we can get major projects approved within 2 years. 4 of the projects on his list are resource development projects, and I'm hopeful that that is a clear sign that he is headed in the right direction. Actually, I'm more than hopeful. With the support of Alberta's energy industry, Alberta's government is taking action to ensure our province leads the world in energy security, supplying the oil and natural gas the world will continue to need for decades to come, and ensuring that all Canadians continue to benefit from the jobs and prosperity created by Alberta's energy. Last week, along with Alberta's energy minister, I announced that our government will be a proponent of an oil pipeline to the northwest BC coast. We're committing at this early stage $14 million to the technical design and detailed application settings. And with the support and technical advice of 3 major oil pipeline companies, including South Bow, Enbridge, and Trans Mountain, our government will make a formal application to the Federal Project Office under the Building Canada Act. My hope, or rather my goal, is to get this pipeline project on the list of the federal government's list of nation-building projects, which it will announce next month in time for Grey Cup. In the meantime, I will be meeting with the Prime Minister and Ottawa officials to continue the conversation that we've been having since he got elected. And I'll be reinforcing the fact that Canada must commit to aggressively knocking down barriers and investing in our future if we are going to build a stronger country in the long term. These conversations are crucial to the fate of our nation, and especially at a time of uncertainty in our relationship with the United States, our largest trading partner. We all have to come together to create a Canada that is stronger and more united than ever. That begins by strengthening the ties between our provinces and territories, between Alberta and Quebec, and between West and East, because unity makes strength. L'union fait de force. I look forward to a growing unity between our provinces, along with growing investment and many shared opportunities as we continue to build a partnership that is stronger than ever. Thank you, and I look forward to chatting with Isabelle in our fireside chat.
Well, thank you so much, Madame Premier.
Thank you.
Let's dive right away. My new priorities as a new CEO, of course, is trade diversification. Yes. And that means, for sure, international markets, but also, more importantly, inter-provincial trade. And we've said it, but let's repeat it. Alberta has been the champion in Canada when it comes to removing barriers to inter-provincial trade, where I must say, sadly, that Quebec leads the way for a number of restrictions still. Even after the work of Christopher Skeet, we still have too many numbers of restrictions. What are the most significant trade barriers between Alberta and Quebec, and how can we work together to advocate for this to change and to change within the next months?
I think historically, some of the issues that Quebec has is they want to make sure they're protecting the culture industries and make sure that they're protecting the French language. But I think English Canada has accommodated that because we all have bilingual packaging and messaging. So I don't know that that is a huge barrier. I think one of the issues is a commitment around wanting to build out energy infrastructure. I think it's no secret that when the Energy East pipeline was canceled, that demonstrated that there's a bit of a different approach in Quebec for good reasons. I think Quebec is able to rely on hydroelectric power for electricity, and so maybe does not see the same reliance on that energy source as other parts of the country. But I would say that we're in a very different position now because Quebec's energy grid is constrained. And it will take many years to develop an expansion of your hydroelectric resources. Meanwhile, you're sitting on a 200-year supply of natural gas, which can come to market quickly. And what I would love to see is for Quebec and Alberta to partner on developing that natural gas be able to develop all of the supply chain associated with developing it, develop the export facilities to help our friends in Europe, and maybe at some future point even connect in Alberta's natural gas supply with Quebec's natural gas supply. Not only would that create a whole ream of new markets, which is, I think, the whole purpose of the exercise that we have, but I think it would also create as I joke, a new revenue stream for Quebec so they don't have to be as reliant on equalization. And so I would say that part of it has been a little bit of a difference of priority just because of the unique geography and geology that Quebec has versus Alberta. But when I've come here and seen the number of businesses that are investing already in Alberta, I really do think those are barriers that can be overcome.
Well, let's stay on that topic regarding how we can work together and maybe is there a moment right now, we talk a lot about digital sovereignty, AI, the capacity for Canada to build those high performance computing capacity. Mila and Amy in Alberta are already working together. What is your vision regarding data, energy, and how maybe Quebec and Alberta can work closer together to give Canada its digital sovereignty regarding, let's say, defense and national security?
Yeah. Again, I do think that, I know it may sound sort of alien to this audience to be talking about natural gas as being, I think, the bridge. I know it's been talked about as a transition fuel. And one of the things that we've discovered in Alberta is part of the reason we were able to dramatically reduce our emissions is by switching away from coal to natural gas. So I think there needs to be a conversation about what that looks like, either adding natural gas to the Quebec power grid or using natural gas as an interim step to get data centers started so that whatever comes after can be built. We can't afford to wait 10 or 20 years for the next hydro plant or the next nuclear plant. This is moving very, very quickly. And the advantage that natural gas turbines have is that if you can get the supply chain, which is something we need to talk to GE or Siemens or Mitsubishi about, if we can get the supply chain, it can come on relatively quickly within a year or two or three. And then you can start by having the data centers begin and then expand by using other types of energy. But I don't think we can afford to wait on this. Certainly China is not waiting. As I understand it, China is building massive coal plants on spec, knowing they will need the power to power AI data centers. And so we have to have a little bit of a reality check about the data race that we're in. Do we want China to win that race, or do we want a free society like we have in North America to win that race? I know which side I want to win that race. But if we don't understand and come to grips with the fact that we have to be energy abundant in order to be able to support that development, we are going to continue to fall behind. And I think that's the reckoning that our country's having right now, is that I think that there was this idea that we could go off in a certain direction, that we'd all be able to run our economies off wind and solar and batteries. I think we're now beginning to understand that we need a broader mix. I think Europe is beginning to understand that. And that's the conversation that we're starting today. But when you think about the opportunity, because Quebec is already well advanced on data centers. And so not only can they be the expertise that would be able to build them across the country, but if we're also working on bringing the supply chain home to Canada, every aspect of the construction that's needed towards that, we could rely on the manufacturing sector in Quebec and in Ontario. And then comes the use case for AI data. So I met this morning with, I thought it was hilarious, that you have a company here that is a world leader in pipeline integrity. And I just thought, how did that happen? How did Quebec become the center of a pipeline integrity company? But there you go. That just shows the breadth of business experience that you have. But if we can then figure out ways to use the AI data, that's what's going to be really important. I saw Saudi Aramco, their CEO, speak at the CERA Week, which is the major conference for energy in Houston. And they have already developed 499 use cases for AI data. And one of it is looking at historical data for where pipelines corrode, to be able to do some prediction of where you're going to end up with a potential pipeline burst so that you can go in and proactively fix it. And so when I heard that, I thought, well, I wonder what the other 498 use cases are. But all of the companies around the world that are well advanced on this, they're not just talking about building the centers, they're now talking about how do we use it. And when you talk about manufacturing intelligence, it's limitless. But I think Alberta offers a real opportunity because we can build quickly, because we've got a near limitless supply of natural gas. We do have cold weather, which helps with cooling of the AI data centers. I think sovereign compute is going to become increasingly important to our allies in Europe. And I think that the combination of factors, in addition to having we have an artificial intelligence, as you've mentioned, association, and we also have one of the premier minds in artificial intelligence who just won the Turing Award. So there are so many reasons for Quebec and Alberta to partner on that.
And thank you to have raised that. And you were mentioning a Quebec company earlier. There's another one that can be involved in, and what we just talked about is hypertech. We know that Deep Sky is also another Quebec flagship is also involved in Alberta regarding innovative way of capturing carbon. Do you want to talk about it a bit?
I should tell you, when I talk about the grand bargain being a new bitumen pipeline, but decarbonizing the production end of it, the reason that's important is that it relies on a number of technologies. So our Pathways group of companies, there's 6 major bitumen producing companies, they believe that their pathway to having greater market share and greater longevity is to offer a lower carbon product. So that's part of what the impetus was. And they've been working on this project for years. So part of it is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And so we had to map out our pore space, which I understand is best in the world, second only to Russia. And so that gives you some idea of where we are at. But we've already mapped it out, and we've also started having hubs operated. So that's one part. The other part is interties, so that we can have a Western grid. I don't know how cost-effective it is to have power coming all the way from this far east, but certainly Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia, if we have an integrated grid, now we can use hydroelectric power. If we partner with AtkinsRéalis, we may be able to get a reactor so that we can build out nuclear, and that can also act as a backup to power. That's sort of the vision, so that decarbonizes a lot of the energy that is needed. And then the last step, sort of the last mile, is direct air capture. And talking with the principals on that this morning, they think that the industry of direct air capture is going to be bigger than the oil and gas industry. And so they are already at the forefront. They have all of the companies that are interested in trying to master this new scientific challenge are going to be centered in Innisfail, Alberta. And I don't know all of the new industries that may end up developing out of that, because direct air capture and storage is one aspect, but there's also utilization. And the utilization case, I think, still has yet to be fully mapped out, but that can create an entire new industry. The other thing I would say is, for those who don't know the oil industry that well, part of our development as an industry has always been to find the useful piece of a barrel that we need, and it started off with kerosene. And then there was a whole bunch of sludge, and some great entrepreneur came along and said, can I make use of that sludge? And with each iteration, they kept on finding more and more useful products. So now we have 6,000 different products that come from a barrel of oil. And not all of them are combustion. In fact, there's many refineries who will have about 60% of their heavy oil go to make asphalt, which is a non-combustion use. We're talking about carbon fiber, carbon nanofibers, other type of building materials, petrochemicals and lubricants, and so on. And so that's the value proposition that I think we're trying to have the world understand, is that we are transitioning away from emissions. We are not transitioning away from oil and gas production. We will find different uses for this incredibly valuable product, but develop it in a way that has less and less impact on the environment. And all of our companies are committed to doing that. I'm just delighted to see that there's some partners in Quebec willing to help us with that.
On a less positive note, or less future...
I thought we were keeping this upbeat.
Yeah, no, but actually I'm going through something that is a bit saddening to read, actually. It's regarding our industrial competitiveness. And I just wanted to mention a statistics from a national bank, actually, that not so long ago, well, in 2000, Canada ranked 5th in the world for industrial competitiveness. Since then, it has been relegated, sorry for that, to the 20th place. And actually, notre secteur maintenant est plus petit que celui de l'Irlande. So there was a shift for this idea of a service economy. And now we're back trying to find our sovereignty in terms of our supply chain. And we need to go back to invest massively in reindustrialization, but also in R&D. Because if you want to go back to have those world-class plant and industry, we have to invest in R&D. What are your vision on that, and what are you championing in Canada regarding this topic?
Yeah. Well, I was surprised to hear this morning about how much the manufacturing base has declined in Eastern Canada. It was shocking to me and surprising. And even a sentiment that was expressed that, well, we don't need a manufacturing economy, we're going to be a service-based economy.
That was not just East, that was Canada, though, not East Canada, but still.
We may have taken a different approach in Alberta. Yeah. But that's shocking to me, to have a country that is so geographically diverse, that has every natural resource the world wants, and not just oil and gas and critical minerals and uranium, but potash and food and fiber. We have everything that the world could possibly want. But when it comes to trying to be self-sufficient, we noticed this, that when we were imposing tariffs on goods coming from the United States, there were basic things that I would have thought, why can't we get that from Ontario, Quebec? Why can't we have 42-inch pipe? Why do we not make that in Ontario, Quebec? Why do I have to go to the United States for that? Why do we not produce axles in Canada? Why do we have to go to the United States for that? Steel beams as well. One of my big companies, JBS, they had to get steel beams from the United States. Even frac sand. We didn't have our own supply of frac sand. And so that was really illuminating to me, is that when we were looking at all of the things that we were tariffing coming in from the US, it was the question of, this is something I would have expected. We would have been able to get from our friends and neighbors with the manufacturing base in Ontario and Quebec. And yet it sounds like that's been on decline in both Ontario and Quebec for the past 20 years. So how do we amp that up again? It requires energy. There's just no way around it. Manufacturing is a very energy-intensive process, and those are the reasons why those two things are linked. And I think it's part of the reason why we developed this way, that we would be able to provide energy to the East would use it to develop manufactured goods, we would buy them back. And this is, I think, the virtuous circle that Canada is meant to be. Instead, what happened is we started looking north-south, and so our energy goes down south and our manufacturing goods come out from there. And I think the same thing is for Eastern Canada. But now we've realized how perilous that is, that we don't know if the relationship with the United States is going to normalize, even if there's a change in leadership in the White House. This may be this protectionist trend. This may be the new normal with our United States trading partner for some time. And so what do we do? I think what we have to do is we have to reinvest in understanding that we need to be in all of the above. We have to be able to support each province in the goods and services it can produce, and increasingly we're going to have to redevelop our manufacturing base. And that, I think, is good for Quebec, and we're more than happy to change our supply chain so that we can support that. And also even potentially develop it in Alberta as well, because I think this has got to be the moment of reckoning that we have here, is that as a country, we're in grave danger, and to be able to survive as a country, I think we have to make sure that we're supporting each other. So that's the moment that we're in, and I guess it's still open to be seen. I'll be seeing from the Prime Minister Carney whether he's going to make some of the amends that we need to be able to be that constructive partner. But I'm sure that other provinces also have other priorities. But we are happy to be a voice championing the province's interests, and I'll make sure that I continue to do that and look for opportunities to do more trade.
And concretely, wouldn't it be the right moment, you were talking about moment, to organize a summit, we've discussed this morning, between Quebec, Alberta, and Ontario, to build on a common front around manufacturing, energy security, and our ambition to reinforce our industrial base so that companies can hear from their government, the three government, what you need, and then to make sure that we map this supply chain that Canada needs. And let's start with the three leaders and sit together and organize a big summit on that.
I love this idea. So I'll put my wish list on the table. One of the things that we discovered, quite embarrassing to us in Alberta, is that we didn't even produce our own frac sand. We were getting tariffed on frac sand coming in from Wisconsin. And part of it was that when we issued a permit to develop frac sand, it was too small in acreage. It was only 80 acres. So we had to change the law to increase it to 3,000 acres, which now gave the industry enough certainty that they would have a supply to be able to develop it, and we're expanding frac sand. But I can't easily do that with natural gas turbines, and so I'm just putting it out there. If anyone wants to build us some natural gas turbines, you will find a ready customer. I also do have a couple of businesses in Alberta that if they could partner with one of the big companies, either Siemens or GE or Mitsubishi, they believe that they could develop those turbines. But that's what's going to happen. That's the conversation we have to have. It's either we'll source it ourselves, or can we work together to source it so that we mutually benefit the way we always have historically? And I think we do need to have myself at the table, Monsieur Legault, Doug Ford, as well as the chamber leads, and we can put on the table, here are the things that we have had trouble sourcing. Can you retool your existing facilities in order to be able to provide this? And I think that we would be we'd be able to develop a list by talking to our business community. We've got our Alberta Chamber of Commerce president who is here from Alberta. I'm quite certain that your chambers would be able to develop that list as well. Same with Ontario. And then let's really identify the ways in which we can be a leader. Because if we develop that and start trading with each other, then it's also something potentially we can export internationally as well. And I think that's a very constructive conversation for us to have. And I'd love it if your chamber would lead that effort.
Thank you, Premier Smith. We have less than 2 minutes, sorry, because I know that you're heading to Ottawa to meet Premier Carney. Very quickly, so very short answer. On aerospace, Alberta is growing in that matter. Montreal is the third largest aerospace hub in the world. We know you're already working with CAE. You have big ambition with de Havilland, with WestJet, with Lufthansa Technique. What's the vision in 30 seconds for aerospace in Alberta?
Well, do know I fly both Air Canada and WestJet, because I know our friends from Air Canada. I actually flew out here on Air Canada, had a great experience, so thank you for that. But WestJet is... WestJet did agree to headquarter in Alberta, and as a result, again, this is an example of how the supply chain is moving to them. So Lufthansa has now established a $120 million facility. They'll be refurbishing their engines, 200 a year. CAE has established flight training there. De Havilland, with the partnership with the federal government, we had to get a 22 plane agreement with Europe in order to be able to make that work. And now we're getting orders in from all over. They're also going to develop their supply chain down in my
water bomber.
For the water bombers, yes. And then down in my district that I represent, we have the Suffield Air Base, which is a partnership with the British Army. They've gone from tank training to a drone training, and so that's going to be, there's a growing drone industry. Down in Medicine Hat, we do have 2 different DIAN investment centers or research centers in conjunction with NATO, one in Edmonton at U of A, one in Calgary at SAIT. We've got a 0-degree Kelvin lab down in Lethbridge that can help us with space technology development. So all of that, and we have 3 other bases. We've got Cold Lake, which is, if we end up actually buying the F-35s, that's where most of them will be housed, as well as Army bases in Wainwright and in Edmonton. So we have I think an aerospace triangle is what we've been calling it. And I think that with the combination of civilian use as well as defense use, we think that that could also be a growing area of collaboration. One more I'll say, because I know we are out of time, but I am just so excited about the Caisse de dépôt and all of the things that they have invested in. They are an incredible partner for us in Alberta. And one thing I found recently, which is why I've been so focused on this pipeline to the BC coast, is that DP World is the Dubai-based port company that is 20% owned by your Caisse de dépôt. And they have been building out our port infrastructure in Western Canada. Port of Prince Rupert, I think of it as our port. My former Premier, Peter Lougheed, wanted that to really get going, so he backstopped a $277 million investment in a grain terminal all the way back in 1984. And look where they are today. 30 million tons of export. And to me, these are the true nation-building projects that if you can have Quebec benefit as an investor, some of the businesses associated with it, CN, which is the terminal point of Port of Prince Rupert, working with them to try to twin the line there. When you do that, you can transport everything. It's not just oil, it won't just be gas. We already have propane there, but you can put any type of critical mineral or fiber or manufactured good or food product on that and create an opportunity to open the entire country to Asian markets. I know that this part of the country, we tend to be focused on Europe, but I can tell you that is an amazing opportunity. And you should be very proud that the Caisse de dépôt had the vision to be able to see that and start building that out. It makes a big difference to us in Alberta. It makes a big difference to my friend Scott Moe in Saskatchewan. And we want to be able to leverage exactly those kind of partnerships to do a whole lot more of that. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I hope we continue the conversation.
So we won't have time, actually, to talk about your vision of exporting more to Japan and to South Korea. We didn't have time to talk about the Alberta Rail Master Plan, in which we have many of our engineering and transportation expertise from Montreal that will be and could be involved. So last question before you leave. We ask every leaders on this stage to talk about what makes them optimistic about Montreal in the future. But I can maybe ask the question, what makes you optimistic about Canada in the future?
Well, especially coming here now twice in the last 6 months, the depth of the business community, the depth of, I think, the cooperation between various government entities and the private sector in being able to break through some of the barriers. That is something that the rest of the country now realizes we need to do, is there needs to be that partnership. Sometimes the government entity can be a catalyst in order to get the development happening. And I think Quebec and Montreal in particular, with your business community, you have a lot to teach the rest of the country, but we also want to be partners as well. I think that there's an immense opportunity on the things that we've talked about. We didn't even have a chance to talk about agri-food or healthcare. We know that everybody needs to build out a whole bunch of new and exciting healthcare innovations, including AI and how that will apply. And I guess what I have seen with my meetings with Quebec business leaders is maybe it's because you've always had your own international trade division. I think you've got 64 countries and trade offices around the world. You've always understood that if the world wants to buy from Quebec, Quebec has to be its own best salesperson. So we're following that. There's no one who can sell Alberta, I think, better than the Alberta Premier. And so if we can, if the two of us can work together on trying to find those things where we agree and maybe not talk so much about the areas where we disagree, I think that there's incredible reason to have optimism. And I'm looking forward to that next meeting with Doug Ford and François Legault, where we really talk about how we're going to make sure that we invest in each other.
Mesdames et Messieurs, Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith. It was fun.
Yes, we'll do this again.
I hope you're happy.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll do this again.